Hello and welcome back to this channel. So in today's tutorial, we're going to draw one of my favorite reptiles. That is this one right here. I really tried to draw a snake which looks like a snake, but obviously I'm not really good at realism. So we're going to try and draw an illustrated style of a green snake. So let's just get started. I'm going to be using a square artboard. If you don't find it here, you can either go to custom size or click on create new. Go to digital and you see the square artboard, just click on this. So I have a sketch and a color palette for you guys. So if you want, go ahead and download it. And you can find the link to do that in the description box below. Once you have downloaded everything, click on your images, go to photos, and then bring in the sketch. And then click on done. Let's go to levels, reduce the opacity, and click and make this as multiply. Click back so that it goes away. Click on photos and bring in your color palette. I'm going to increase the size so that it's easy to pick the colors. Click on done. Now click and hold on the color until you see this icon. This color gets picked. Now we'll make a mark on your artboard. Doesn't matter what brush you're on. What it does is it brings it up under recents. Now let's do that for all the colors. Okay, once you're done, you can go ahead and hide it by clicking on this eye. You can do the same thing for the color palette. Okay, so now let's start drawing the snake. So we're going to tackle the snake in few layers because it will be easier to add shadows to it. So go ahead and go below the snake layer. You can click on the background layer and click on a new layer so that you have a new layer below the sketch. Okay, and now I'm going to go into my vector brushes because it's much easier to control using a vector brush. So I'm just going to use that, and I will use this bright nice green that I have for my snake. So this brush size could be anything. Keep it at any size that you feel it's comfortable. This might be too big, so I'm going to uncheck that and reduce it to maybe about 15. By the way, if you click and hold, you get a notepad and you can type in. Don't get confused with the comma because here in Europe 15.5 is denoted as 15,5. So it's just 15.5. Okay, you can keep it at any number you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw this snake right here, and the sketch is not perfect, so I would recommend that you try to draw it nicely. So I'm just going to draw like that. That didn't come out well because you have to make the snake all nice and round. Like that. I'm going to join this, by the way. And make sure you don't have these weird edges. Go ahead and draw nicely. Take your time in drawing this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the sketch, go back to the layer where I have the snake and try to fix these things like this. You can use your two fingers to undo things. Okay, I think that looks good. And once it's done, you can use your fill bucket tool here and just color it. Okay, now let's go bring back the sketch now. Go to a different layer. You can always click on plus to go to a different layer. But I want this layer to be below this layer right now. Okay, and now we're going to draw the rest of the snake. So let's do that, but not this here. Go to your brush. That's a vector brush. And let's uncheck this snake part here. Let's go to the new layer. And let's draw. And I'm going to go ahead and join these two here like this. That's why I unchecked the snake above so that I know that I've joined them. Okay, and I think that is cool. Let's fill it. And now let's uncheck the sketch. Oops. And make sure all our things are nice. I think this is below, so that's okay. And here it looks not so nice. So I'm going to go ahead and try and fix that. Okay. I think that looks good. Now I'm going to uncheck that again, bring in this sketch as well. Okay, now it's time to add the last one. That click on a new layer and bring it below this layer right here. We're going to add this part. Just draw this and then make sure you come back and choose this like this, and we're going to color that. So what I did was I basically made so that this part is covered in green. Uncheck that. Okay, now it's time to add all the highlights and things like that. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and give in some shadows, especially here and here. Okay, oops. So let's do that. Let's go to the layer which has this part of the snake here. Click on a new layer and click on clipping mask. Now let's go ahead and choose some darker color of green. There's so many of them, so choose whichever you want. It really doesn't matter that much. So go to your brushes, that's a pixel brushes, go to basic and go to soft round opacity. And you're going to check the shadow range here. I've kept it at 120 now and it seems to be working fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bit of shadow to this corner here. I'm not going to take it high above here. Nope. We're going to add just to this corner here. And once you've added that, all you have to do is go to your eraser. You can keep it at any size you want and just erase it off over here, exactly where you see this bend, right? So make sure you go ahead like that and erase it off. So what you have to do is you have to go back and uncheck your sketch and make sure that you can see that there is a bend kind of thing happening there. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing over here as well. So I'll go back to my brush here and I'll go back to the clipping mask that I have and I'm going to add a bit of shadow here. You see how little shadow I added? Just going to add a bit here. And now I'll go back to my eraser tool and I'm going to erase this part like this. I'm going to make sure I erase here like this and not depending on the sketch that I have, but depending on the painting that I've created, like what I've filled in. Okay, I kind of don't like it, so I'm just going to uncheck that and go back to my brush and add a bit of shadow here. Now go to your eraser tool and try to erase it off like that. Let's go check it out. It's not even. Just check that. You see this gap here? We don't want that. So let's go here and looks good. Okay, that's done as well and that's perfect. So now we're going to add the yellow bits to it. So go to this layer and you have a new layer. So I'm going to click on another clipping mask layer. So if you don't get clipping mask automatically, go ahead and click on this button to create into a clipping mask. Okay, now for color, choose the yellow that you have, that is the 6200 100, and we're going to use that and put it over here. Make sure you put a little bit of pressure here so that's a little darker, by the way, like that. And we're going to add a bit here as well. So I'm using very light pressure here right now, just to this curve like that. Okay, and so now we can add some highlights, but let's go ahead and finish up the rest of the snake as well. So I'm going to go ahead into this part now, that is this part now, and I will choose again the darker color that we had chosen earlier. The brush is the same thing, so go to that layer, click on a new layer and click on a clipping mask. So I'm going to increase this to about 230 and I'm going to add a bit of shadow here like that, so wherever the snake is overlapping, and also a bit here. So but I'm going to continue this and I'm going to add a bit of shadow like this. So what I'm doing here right now, let me just quickly show you with a vector brush. So I just added shadow in this region, this region, this region, and then I added shadow about in this region here like this. So I did not add shadow anywhere else, just this region. And I'm going to uncheck that. Okay, I'll go back to the clipping mask and now I need to add some, the yellow bits to it. So I'm going to click on a new layer and make sure it's a clipping mask. I'll go back to your yellow color that you have. Go back to your brush. It's at 230. We can check that. It might be a little too big. So I'm going to go back to about 120-ish. And I'm going to add a bit of color here actually to the bottom part. Like that. Okay. And I'm also adding a bit here on the top. And that looks good. Don't make it too yellow. And like I said, you can always use a little bigger. I'm going to change the 120, I guess. It's all about experimenting with things. So if something doesn't work, go ahead and change maybe your brush size or something like that. And you should be able to get the effect that you really want, okay? Don't give up when you're trying to draw these things. It just takes a bit of effort. That's it. I'm going to add a bit more color here by putting a little more pressure, and a bit more here by putting a little more pressure. Now the next one is this part here, that is this part. I'm going to click on new layer and make it into a clipping mask, and we're going to add shadows to this as well. So go back to your dark green and we're going to add shadow here like this, but reduce this 140s maybe. I'm going to add more bits of shadow here. And I think that looks good. Okay, now go back to this part here, that is this part, and I'll click on a new layer and make it a clipping mask again. And I want to add a bit of shadow here. Wow. So just this head part, okay? And I will uncheck the sketch to see how this is turning up, and I think this is looking pretty good, isn't it? It looks like a bit like a snake now. Okay, so we've added a shadow over here, and I want to add a bit of shadow here as well. So what I'm doing is I'm adding in the center and not touching the sides now. Okay, so what I will do the same thing here, like in this position. So I'm just going to take this and make it in this position. That's the same thing I'm going to do here, and I'm going to add a shadow like this as well. And I'm on that layer now, so a bit of shadow here and a bit here and maybe a bit down here as well. Okay, I think that looks good. All right, so now we have that, and now it's time to add some highlights. So you can either choose this very gray highlight that I have, or you can choose white. Let's choose white, shall we? Okay, brush is set at 147. I'm going to bring back my sketch because I want to know where the eye is, okay? So I will reduce the size to about 120-ish because I want a very thinner line here. This is still too thick for me, so I'm going to reduce this even more and maybe make like this, a bit of a shadow there. Like that, okay? And now you can increase this to again 190 or 120 or whatever you want, maybe 140, okay? And then now I'm going to add some highlight here. So you know what, I'm going to create a new layer for this so that we don't mess up anything, okay? And now I'm going to click on a highlight here, and you see what I'm doing? I'm just following the snake line like that, right? So we're going to add a bit of highlight here and follow the snake. And now I'm going to go back to this part here, click on a new layer and make sure it's a clipping mask, and we're going to add highlight here like that. So what I did here is I just added a highlight in this area like this. I'm going to add some here as well, okay? That looks good, and I think I'm done with the highlights because I don't want to overdo it, you know. I'll go back to this layer here and maybe give some here like that. Let's check. That's fine. That's all right. So now it's time to add some finer details. So I'll go back to the topmost layer that I have, that's right below sketch. Click on a new layer. The color we'll put black, and I'm going to go ahead and choose the vector brush now because you know it's much simpler. So I will just create an eye and I'm going to fill it up like this. Okay, and then I'll choose white, and then I will just give a tiny bit of a thing like this. But we are not done yet. Click on a new layer and click on clipping mask, and let's go back to the soft round opacity brush, and then I'm going to do a bit, oops, not so much, let's reduce this, and a bit like this so that you know it creates a whitish tinge right here. Like that. So you can just uncheck the sketch to see how it looks like. Yeah, that's perfect. But I'm not done yet. I'll go back to the vector brush, go back to this eye layer, and I'm going to add a little bit of a snot here. Oops, not this. Go to black and add a bit here. And now it's time to add some freckles and stuff like that, okay? So I'll uncheck this, and now you can see your snake. It's almost done, and I think it's come out pretty well. Although we could improve it, I guess, with respect to shading and stuff, but that's okay. You know, we are all learning here, so it's completely okay. So let's go ahead and add some spots to this. So people who have premium access to Fresco, you can actually go ahead and choose comics, and I think it's not available for everyone. So for the free version, but don't worry, I'll give you a solution for that. So people who have premium access, you can just go to comics, and there's something called as crackle. And you can choose the darkest green that you have, one of those things, colors. So once you have selected the brush, you can reduce the size to anything you want. And I think I'll just keep it at whatever brush size is there. So let's go to this layer where you have this, you know, the top part of this one, and click on a new layer so that it's a clipping mask. Then you can use this to color your snake, and it gives a very nice effect. But don't worry, if you don't have that brush, it's completely okay. Go ahead and do the same thing. Click on a new layer and create a clipping mask. And now we're going to adjust one of our brushes to give the same effect. Go to basics and go to hard round, you know, the first default brush that you have. Oops, undo that. And then in here, go to these levels. Even once you go there, go to shape dynamics And in here, the size jitter is going to be set to 0, and make sure you change it to maybe, I don't know, 60% or something, so that, you know, it changes. Okay, and now just reduce this to maybe around 40s, I guess. I think that 38 should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a different color. I'm going to choose this dark green. That's 138. Oops. That's 138, 130. And you can go ahead and dab it anywhere you want. And you can see that it creates circles in, you know, varied sizes. If you want the circles to be bigger, make sure you go ahead and increase the size here. And I'm going to add something like that. So since you're on clipping mask, you can go ahead and add like this, so that there's some dots, you know, outside the snake area as well. And then it looks like it's pretty nice. Okay. So you don't add too many spots, because I don't think that'll look good. And you can actually go ahead to this layer now, create a new layer, make sure it's a clipping mask, and go ahead and add some here as well. All right, I think your snake is almost ready, but we need to put some background so that it looks a little nicer. So let's go to the bottommost layer, which is this image layer. Click on a new layer. So now I'm going to choose a different brush. That is, let's go back here and go back to blah, 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 dry media. And in here, you can choose rough pencil. And we're going to put it at the maximum size available. That's 500. And let's choose some color that is black. And I'm going to add some, you know, textures here and there like that. You can go ahead and add it anywhere that you want. And let's choose some dark green now, this one I guess, and add some here and there as well. You can reduce the size to about 300, 356 actually, because then it gives a much crispier looking texture. Okay, and then I'm going to add a different green, a lighter green, a bit here and there as well. Don't worry, we'll come back with the black and fill it in, because we want this to be a little nicer as well. Okay, and then let's go ahead and choose the black again, and let's just fill it in. Okay, so don't worry about these extra bits when you try to export it. Let me just show it to you. So it shows up as just the outer rim. So it cuts off anything that's outside the artboard. So you don't have to worry about that getting exported as well. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this tutorial, and I hope you liked it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you get notified every time I post a new video. You can always support me by buying me a coffee on ko-fi.com. You can find the link in the description box below. By the way, thanks again to all those people who have supported me so far. I really, really appreciate it. It's okay if you cannot support me on Ko-fi. You can always support this channel by telling it to your friends and family, or posting it on your, social media handles, so that people get to know about my tiny little channel, and it'll help me grow. If you do create anything using one of my tutorials, don't forget to post them on Instagram and tag me, that is at printmesomecolor or at thinkbeyondcolor, and I would love to look at what you've created. So thank you so much for watching this, and I guess I'll see you in the next video then. Bye bye.